Okay, prynawn da. I hope you're all okay. My name is Rhys, and I work for a project called Technocamps. We're a project based in the universities around Wales, and we go to schools and we try to get pupils interested in computer science and STEM subjects. So we've got a website and a YouTube channel, where they include lots of resources and tutorials. So please take a look on our website, on our YouTube channel. There's lots of resources for learning about computer science and STEM subjects, and there's lots of resources that can be used in schools as well. Okay, so check it out. So I'm doing a session now on cryptography. So hopefully we can learn a bit about cryptography. So we're going to try and understand what cryptography is and why it's useful, learn about some famous codes and ciphers and how they work, and hopefully develop our decryption skills by cracking different codes and ciphers. So let's have a start the task to warm up a bit. So can you decrypt the cryptography linked terms being shown? So here's the first message. So I'm looking for two things. What is being shown here? How is the message created? And what is the secret message? Or if you can't think of the message, why do you think the numbers are being shown? What could they be representing? Prynawn David, just saw your message. And Laura. See, nice. So yeah, it's saying cipher. So can we see that we've got numbers being shown? And if you figured it out, these numbers are representing different letters. Well done, Daisy. So A is representing 1, B is 2, and so on. Nicely spotted. Okay, so there's the code we're using. And there is the message that was hidden. So C, 3 for C, 9 is an I, 16 is P, and so on. Okay. Now for the next one, we can see we got 5, 14, 3, 18, 25, 16, 29, 15, 14. And as you can see, it spells out the message encryption. So the 5 would be an E, the 14 would be N, and so on. 3C, okay? Now the next one I'm going to show up, and I want you to try and convert into the coded message using the code where A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, and so on. Okay, so here's the message. Can you encrypt it this time? What would it change into? It really is a brain worker. So, anybody seeing what the S would become? So the S is the 19th letter of the alphabet. So it would be 19. What would the E be? 19, 5, 3, 16, 5, 20. Excellent. That's the first part, Connor. Diolch. So that's secret. And then message would be 12, 5, 19, 19, because we've got that double S, 175. And when we're looking at coded messages or when we're encrypting, patterns like that are something that are really good to look for. So if they're in the word message, for example, we got two letters the same. So we've got a double letter, S and S, which becomes 1919. So when we're trying to decrypt messages, looking for those patterns is something that's really, really helpful to do. Okay, so then what is cryptography? We've just done a little bit of encryption and decryption, but what is cryptography? So cryptography is the use of techniques for secure communication. So for example, if we need to give a message to someone, send a message, and we don't want other people to be able to read it or know what it says, then we can encrypt it. Okay, we can use techniques to secure the message so it's not readable for other people. So it allows us to protect the information, and we can protect it using things like codes and ciphers. And as we said, the intention is that anybody in between the sender and the receiver, anybody possibly intercepting the message, it makes it very, very difficult for them to read or figure out what the message is. So the way it works is we start with our message in our normal language, which would be plain text. So for example, we are doing this session in English, or we could be doing it in Welsh. So plain text could be English or Welsh. And then we'd use a key to encrypt the message. And that key would be an algorithm for changing certain letters or maybe certain words into something called ciphertext. So in the example we just showed, A in the plain text, we would use the key where the algorithm would tell us to turn A into a 1, and then the ciphertext for A would be a 1. So then we send the message and it gets encrypted like that. And then the receiver receives the message, and then they've got to do the reverse. So they've got to take the ciphertext and use the same key to decrypt the message back into plain text so that it can be read easily by the receiver. Okay, so that's basically the idea of how cryptography works, where we're encrypting plain text into ciphertext and then decrypting ciphertext back into plain text. Okay. So we actually use cryptographic techniques in our lives very, very regularly, and sometimes we might not even notice. So can you think of any examples where you might use cryptography, where you encrypt messages and decrypt messages daily? Any ideas? Or do you know of any examples that we use? Online, cool. Yeah, we do stuff online. So in particular, I'm sure lots of us do message sending, don't we? We have probably got family, friends, people we send messages to. Now, when we send messages using our devices or different messaging services, we write the message out in plain text. We click send. It gets encrypted into ciphertext, sent over whatever network we're using, and then the receiver receives the message in the encrypted ciphertext, and then it gets decrypted back into plain text on their device. So definitely online with places like bank transfers, bank websites. Definitely when we are using accounts to enter passwords. Definitely messaging services. So for example, WhatsApp. Okay, so we got different ways that we use cryptography every day in our lives. And it's something we often don't even think about. We just write the message, click send, and it's done for us. And probably in our daily lives, we haven't got an awful lot of messages that we need to be kept secret. Yeah, nice, Daisy. Third-party messaging systems where messages are secure. Brilliant. So like WhatsApp, for example. And in our daily lives, we probably haven't got loads of examples of when we really, really need our messages to be secure, because they probably don't include an awful lot of personal or secret details. Okay, but there are times when it needs to be done. Okay, and these times, when we're sending this personal information on over websites, using bank transfers, entering passwords, okay, that stuff needs to be kept private. So let's look at a couple of examples of cryptography being used in real life. So I'm sure loads of people have heard of Morse code. So Morse code is something that we can use to send messages, and it's been used a lot in war times, especially, for example, when people have been in trouble. And we've got different sets of signals for each letter, and we could do it with lights, with sounds, okay? And each of those different signals combine together to make different letters, and then we can combine a bunch of different signals together to make a word, to make an example, a message to be sent. Okay, so Morse code is a good example. Now, some of you may have heard of this as well. In World War II, it's quite famous that the Germans used some really sophisticated messaging systems where they were able to encrypt their messages using Enigma machines. So the ciphers they would use on the machines to encrypt the messages about their war plans. And it was very difficult for the British or anybody intercepting nice Claire. Anybody intercepting the messages found it really difficult to translate and figure out what it was saying. Okay, and on top of that, not only were these machines really good at encrypting the messages to make them hard to crack, but the cipher was also changed every day. Okay, so not only were you having to find the messages, not only were you having to try and crack the messages, but every day it was a new cipher being used. So A would be, for example, a different letter every day. Now that was really tricky. But somebody called Alan Turing invented something called the bomb, which was used to decrypt the German messages. So he was able to think of a way and create a machine that could check roughly 15 possible ciphers per second. Now, even though that doesn't sound like an awful lot, in terms of what it was actually doing, it was incredibly helpful to the war effort and to help in crack the German ciphers and figure out the messages they were sending, and so figure out their plans. Okay, and it helped save an awful lot of lives. Okay, so it's really important. Okay, so there's some examples. Now we're going to look at some methods of securing messages. Now, the first method we're going to look at is substitution ciphers. So we looked at a substitution cipher at the start as a warm-up, where it was a simple substitution, taking each letter of the alphabet and substituting it for the number, the place number that it is in the alphabet. So as Daisy said, A was 1, B is 2, and so on. But we don't have to just swap our letters for the corresponding number value. We could be swapping them for anything. So we could swap letters for any other letters, or for any other numbers, or for any other symbols. Okay, so even though substitutions can be very simple, where we've just got the letter with the corresponding number, they can also become very, very complicated by using different kinds of symbols to represent each letter, making them much more difficult to crack. Okay, so taking this substitution cipher that we used at the start, can you please write your name into the chat? So if I were doing mine, for example, I'd find R is 18. I'd find H, which is 8. I'd find Y, which is 25. And I'd find S, which is 19. Claire, nice. 3, 2, 1, 18, 5. Brilliant. David, 4, 1, 2, 9, 4. Nice. And as you can see, when we write in these, lots of people, I think, could look at this and have an idea of what we might be doing. Okay, so we can see that this is quite a straightforward substitution. Corner 3, 15, 14, 1, 8. And if we see single digit numbers, like 1, for example, that might make it a little bit easier because that's the first letter in it, A. Okay, nice. So I've got a message on the screen for you. Can you decrypt this time? So take the message, use the key to decrypt the message back into plain text. What does it say? Twenty-five, 3, 8, 14, 15, 3, 1, 13, 16, 19. Nice, Claire and Daisy, says Techno Camps World. Okay, so hopefully you can see that we're taking the number 20, we're finding it in the bottom row, 20, and then we're finding the corresponding letter, which is the T, then the 5 is the E, and so on. Diolch, David. Okay, nice work. But what if we take this now and look at a much more complicated substitution cipher? So can you work out what this cipher is saying without the key? So what's the hidden message, or what's the coded message? And looking at that, is it easy to figure out what's going on? Is it easy to spot any letters or any patterns that you could use? Nice, Clay's figured it out. It does actually say technocamps. Now, what patterns might you have used, Clay? How did you figure it out? Well, maybe you saw that there are 11 letters, and my previous message contained 11 letters also. Maybe you saw that the third letter and the seventh letter are both the same. Both pound signs there, so they both C's. So well done if you were able to figure out that was technocamps. Now, I wonder how easy that would have been outside of this context. So, for example, if you just saw those symbols together, how easy would it be to guess? So here is that cipher. Here's the code. Histogram shows pound most common. Yeah, nice. So you could create a histogram, couldn't you? Nice, David. Nice idea of the different letters or the different symbols. So this is just a cipher that we've made up. Okay, so when you're creating substitution ciphers, it doesn't have to be based on anything. It can be made up from your own ideas, from your own symbols. It could even be symbols you draw. Okay, but in this case, we've used different symbols that we would use in, when we're writing. Okay, but to actually figure that out, to actually crack that code, would be extremely difficult if you've got no context to base it on. So let's try using this then as an example. Can you now write your favorite color with the cipher shown, please? I'll see if I can use the cipher to figure it out, to decrypt your message. Okay, David. D L K E. Oh, I'm struggling with that one, David, sorry. Clay, let's try yours. R-E-D. Yes, I think I got Claire's red. Connor's. G. J. Oh, I think it's meant to be R. Is it green? Nice. Oh, David, you're giving me again. L. K. L. E. Oh, I'm struggling with that again, sorry. David, your keyboard layout is going funny, is it? No problem. Okay, so even writing those messages can be tricky, can't it? Okay, especially with symbols like that. Right, okay, let's try something a little bit more challenging then. I've written a message here. So can you decrypt the message so that it could help you to practice your typing? What's the message being shown? So quite tricky, but what patterns could you be looking for? Well, we can see that the first word contains 3 characters. Okay, so we could be thinking what 3-letter words could they be to start a sentence? Maybe you're seeing that the first word and this word here contain the same symbols, so they must be the same word. So if we look, the colon would be a T, the star would be a H, and the percentage sign would be our E. So that first word is the, and then also this word down here is the. And then our second word, we've got a squared bracket closed. So for the Q, we've got an apostrophe for the U, we've got an open bracket for an I, we got a pound sign for a C, and we got a dash for a K. So the quick, and it says, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Okay, so to see all that and to figure it out might be difficult, but if you're familiar with that sentence, which we'd use for typing, so I gave you a clue with it, then you might have figured it out quickly without having to decrypt every single letter and every single word. Okay, so not only can we use the key to decrypt messages, but we can also use the patterns in our language. So like in English, for example, where we've got 3-letter words like the. Okay, no wonder they had a machine, yeah. Okay, so a bit tricky, that one. Now, in a bit, we're going to be looking at the shift cipher. And with shift ciphers, we can have 26 different keys, or 25, you could say, if we don't include the normal letter formations, which we'll look at in a bit. Okay, so that's a bit limited. But with substitution ciphers, looking at what we've just been looking at, with just substituting letters alone, we can create over 400 septillion possible keys. Okay, so like Clay said, but no wonder Turing had a machine, and that was just for letters alone. Imagine if they'd actually brought in numbers and symbols as well. Okay, so actually figuring out hidden messages when we see them can be very, very tricky, especially when we've got no context. Now, a couple of people have already mentioned stuff like looking for common letters. So can you think of any common patterns or nuances of our language that we could look for when trying to decrypt messages? Okay, so if we saw a ciphertext, and we know that the language of the plain text is English, what patterns might we look for to help us figure out what it says? Yeah, so what common letters? So there's an example there. So we got E is the most common letter in the English language. Okay, so looking for a symbol or a letter or a number in the ciphertext that comes up frequently, that could give us an idea it could be the letter E, or possibly T or A. We've also in English got lots of small words, haven't we? So we got a couple of one-letter words like A and I. So maybe when we're looking at the ciphertext we can see a word that's only one symbol long, we got a very good chance of that either being A or I. Then we got lots of two-letter words like of, is, in, it, be, to. Okay, so looking at those could give us clues. We've also got common three-letter words like the and. So looking for those three-letter combinations, those three symbol combinations, could give us ideas also. Yeah, good. Common consecutive letters. Nice, David. So, if, for example, Q and U. Or as we've already mentioned, maybe consecutive double letters. Like double E comes up regularly, doesn't it? Double L, double T. Okay? So looking for patterns can be really helpful when trying to decrypt the messages. Okay. Yeah, nice. So Daisy's saying, if the coded message, so if the ciphertext contains symbols like an apostrophe which are not substituted, then that could give us a good guess of the word like. You are, they are, aren't, don't. Okay, nice, Daisy. That's a really good idea. Okay, so the next cipher we're going to look at is something called a Pigpen cipher. Now, this is also a substitution cipher, but it doesn't use traditional letters or numbers or symbols on the keyboard, for example. It uses made-up symbols. So the way it works is we split the letters of the alphabet into four groups. A to I is in one group, J to R is in another group, S to U is in the third group, and W to Z is in the last group. And then we put those letters into pens. So that's why it's called Pigpen. Okay, so the first section of letters is put into pens with just lines. And the way we figure out the symbol for the letter is to look at the surrounding shape. So for example, the A is surrounded by this kind of backwards L. So the symbol for A would be a backwards L. The F is surrounded by kind of a squared C. So the symbol for F would be that kind of squared C. Okay, and E is in a box. So the symbol for E would be that box. Now in the second group of letters, we figure out the symbol in exactly the same way, except this time every symbol will contain a dot. So for example, if I look at the corresponding position of A, which is J, it'd be exactly the same symbol with our backwards L, but it'd have this dot inside it. And we could tell that that's a J. Now if we go over to here to look at the O, again that's got that squared C, but it's got a dot inside, so we can see that's an O. And then the N in the middle would be a square with a dot inside. And then the S to Z down here work the same, except they're surrounded by diagonal lines. Okay, so the S is surrounded by this kind of V shape, so it would be a V. The V itself is surrounded by kind of the top of a triangle, so that would be the symbol for V. And then WY, sorry, I'm trying to think of the alphabet from a certain point. Cross UVW, XYZ, there you go. would be surrounded by the same shapes except they'd have dots in. So a W would be this V kind of shape with a dot inside. Okay, so let's have a look at some examples. So here's an example of a coded message here. Can you try and figure it out? What is it saying? So using what I've just gone through, so we've got this kind of line at the top and line to the right with a dot inside, which suggests that it would be in this pen. Okay, so have a try. Look at that message, see if you can figure out what it says. Pigpen cipher, brilliant, Daisy, good. Okay, so the line at the top and line to the right with a dot inside, we need to look in the second pen. So line at the top, line to the right is a P. And then we got the next letter is a line above and line left with no dot, so it's the first pen. So line above, line left is an I. Then the third letter again was without a dot, and it's line above, line right, so that's a G. And then you might have spotted that pattern. Again, remember, looking for patterns is really important. So the first word and the second word, the first letters are the same. So pig, and then P, E, N, and then it says cipher. Okay, so well done if you spotted that, Pigpen cipher. Okay, so let's have a try ourselves. Now, it is obviously not, it's more than difficult, sorry. You can't type these coded messages into the chat. I appreciate that. Okay, because we haven't got those symbols on the keyboard. But can you write your name using the Pigpen cipher here, please? Okay, so while you're trying, I'm going to do mine. So R, I need to get an R. So the R is in this second pen with the dots, and it's a line above and line left with the dot inside. So there's my R. Now for H. And if once you've done it, just put done in the chat, please, just so I can know you've had a try. Okay, H. So here it is with no dot. So it's a line left, line above, line right. Left, above, right. R, H. Now Y. We're going down to these diagonal lines here. So the Y is over on the right. So it's kind of a triangle. No, I'm going to say it's a bit like a less than symbol, isn't it? So less than with a dot inside. RHY. Now S is in this third pen without dots, and it's got that kind of V shape around it. There. RHYS. And creating these on the computer is very difficult unless you're using a drawing tool, something like Paint or something. Okay, because we can't type it, can we? So you may be trying to write it on a piece of paper, or maybe you're just thinking of how yours was translate. Okay, so there's a try looking at encrypting a message. What about decrypting now? So can you look at this clue here? And can you figure out what books I've been reading recently? Using the Pigpen cipher to decipher, to decrypt the message. Harry Potter, nice, Daisy, brilliant. Okay, so maybe you were translating letter by letter, sorry, decrypting letter by letter. Yeah, I suppose it is a bit clear, isn't it? Yeah. And, if you just saw these symbols out of context, to actually figure out what each letter is would be very, very difficult, wouldn't it? So brilliant, Daisy. You may have been translating or decrypting letter by letter, and you may also have spotted some clues using some patterns. So maybe you saw that these third and fourth letters are the same. Maybe in the second word you saw again that the third and fourth letters are the same, but different to the double letters from the first word. Maybe you also thought of a famous series of books and you used that as a way of guessing. Okay, so there's different things we can do, isn't it? It's not only about just decrypting letter by letter. Nice. So can you figure out the name of this dog shown on the screen as the next challenge? Oh, Jamie, I can see a symbol now. Sorry, I didn't spot that when you sent it. Daisy saw the double letters. Nice, Daisy. Okay, so it's using those patterns in our English language to help us to figure out as well, isn't it? Keith, nice. Daisy's on it. Brilliant, Daisy. Okay, yes, so we got the first symbol is the line left, line below, line right with the dot inside. Okay, so we go to the second pen and that's a K. Okay, and then so on. Okay, let me just clear my writing on the screen. Well done for spotting that. Okay, so here's the next clue. Here's the next challenge. I've got on the screen a clues for the secret password. Now, there's two parts to this challenge. There's two things you've got to do. Not only do you need to decrypt the message, the Pigpen message, but the message that is revealed will give a clue to the password. Okay? So, have a try this. You've got to decrypt the message first to read what it says, and then it'll give you clues to the password. Can you figure out what the password is? Okay, so once you figure out the line, please post it in the chat so we can share it with each other. And we can, maybe if someone's struggling, then they can have a look and see if it helps them. Okay, so while you're trying to decrypt it and hopefully post it in the chat, I'm going to start. Okay, so we got a line above, left and below. Out of the pen, nice, Claire. I'm going to write that in because Claire's got the first line. Out. I'm sorry, my letters are not great on the screen, but they're out of the pen. Brilliant, Claire. Out of the pen. Now, what's the second line saying? So I'm going to look at the first letter. It's kind of an L shape with a dot, which is actually an L. Let the pigs be. David's got it. Brilliant. Nice. So I'm going to write that in. Out of the pen, let the pigs be, and then dot, dot, dot. So why could those dots be there? And then we also might be spotting the pattern of the. So in the first line we got the, and in the second line we got the. Out of the pen, sorry, let the pigs be. So if they're out of the pen, what could we let the pigs be? And then the third line, what's that saying? So I'm going to do the first letter. It's kind of a backwards L with no dots, so it's an A. All caps, brilliant, Daisy, nice. All caps. And then we got 3 exclamation marks. Why could there be 3 exclamation marks? So nice, Daisy, that message there is telling us that the password is in all caps. But what could the password be? So it says, out of the pen, let the pigs be all caps, with those 3 exclamation marks at the end. So who can guess the secret password? Daisy's got part of it. Daisy said that the letters all need to be in all capitals. So there's one clue. Okay, so we've decrypted our message. Now we've got some problem solving to figure out what the clues lead us to. So what's the missing word? Out of the pen, let the pigs be what? Well, if they're out of the pen, we'd be letting them be. Oops. Free in all caps. Nice, Claire, well done. Okay, so out of the pen, let the pigs be. So the password is free in all caps. So well done if you figured that out. Well done if you spotted it. Nice. So we've decrypted the message and then taken the clues from the message to figure out what the password is. Okay, so that was some examples of substitution ciphers. And the second one there was the Pigpen cipher. Now we're going to look at something called the Caesar cipher. Now, I don't know if you remember from earlier on, but I mentioned the Caesar cipher is a shift cipher. So it was developed in around 100 BC and used by Julius Caesar to be able to send messages to his generals. So maybe when they were at war or, needing to send messages around, they would have used this cipher to take their message, decrypt it into ciphertext, send it to the person they needed to send it to, and then the receiver would know what the code is, what the cipher is, and decrypt it back into plain text. Okay, so this protected their messages from being intercepted. So the way it works, we take the string of letters in our alphabet. So for example, A, B, C, and so on. We keep them in order. And then because we're shifting them, what they change into is shifted along a certain number of spaces. Now we can shift any number we want, and that's how many places we move the letters along. So in this example here, if we use a shift or a key of 3, so A would move along 3 spaces, and it would become 1, 2, 3, and it would become D. B would move along 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3, and it would become E. Okay, so if you were wanting to write the letter A with a shift of 3, you would write the letter D instead. If you wanted to write the letter B with a shift of 3, you write the letter E instead. Okay, so the order of the message that we're sending, the order of the letters and the words doesn't change, but the letters we're using changes, and so it can make it very difficult to read and understand. And then oppositely, if we are decrypting, we would take the letter and shift backwards the number of spaces. So for example, if we are shifting with a key of 3, we would shift backwards. So D would move back 3 spaces and become 1, 2, 3. It would become A. E would shift back 3 spaces and become B. Okay, so as an example, down here we've got a plain text message of hello world, and this would cipher to shift with a shift of 3. It would become Cahur Zruog. Now, here are the letters laid out. Okay, so we got in the top row, the first row 0, we got the letters in order, starting at A to Z. And then with a shift of 1, everything moves forward 1 space, and the Z actually comes round to the A. With a shift of 2, as we said, everything moves forward 2 spaces. With a shift of 3, everything moves forward 3 spaces. Okay, so that's how it works. But to actually have this all laid out would be quite a large piece of paper. So something that they would have used, and we can use instead, is the Caesar cipher wheel. Now this wheel is exactly the same as this table laid out here, except basically the table is rolled around to form the wheel. So the outside wheel here, the larger one on the outside, this is the plain text area. So this is the original letters. And then the wheel inside can actually turn around, and that's the letters we would decrypt it to. Okay? So because the wheel turns, you can move it around to match A up with whatever shift you want. Okay, so you could turn the wheel, for example, and match A up with T, and that would create a shift of 19 because there's 19 here. So if we want to encrypt the message, we take the message from the outside. So for example, if I wanted to encrypt the word Reese, I would go to the outside and find R, and then once I've shifted my inside wheel, I'd find the matching letter here. For the H, I'd find the H on the outside wheel, and then find the matching letter inside. And then oppositely, to decrypt, we would look at the inside wheel and then find the corresponding letter on the outside wheel. Okay, so let's have a look with a shift of 3. Okay, so it's on the screen here with a shift of 3. Can you write into the chat, please, what color hair you've got with a shift of 3? And I'll see if I can figure it out. So remember, because you're going from plain text to ciphertext, you are going to look at the outside wheel first, find your letter, and then find the corresponding wheel on the inside, the letter on the inside, sorry. So for example, like I said, with a shift of 3, if I want to convert to letter R, I'd find R on the outside, and it would become U in my ciphertext. Okay, so having a try. What color hair have you got? See if I can figure it out with a shift of 3. Claire, EURZQ, right, so challenge for me. So I need to go to the inside wheel and find the letter E. Okay, there it is, so Claire, B. Now I need to find the letter U. R. Now I need to find the letter R. O, so B-R-O, Z, W, and then Q, I think I know, is an N. So Claire, I believe you've got brown hair. Daisy, oh, challenging one, Daisy, long one. G, okay. D, and then a D, which is A. So D-A, U, which is an R, an N, which is a K. So dark. And I'm using a pattern here because I've just figured out what EURZQ says because Clay gave it to me. So Daisy, I'm guessing you got dark brown hair. David, why D-O-G? Why dog? So find Y on the inside. V, find the D. V, A, O, L, V, A, L, G, D. David, I think that you were writing bold. Oh, I had it wrong. I had the first letter wrong. Sorry, David. I messed up then. No, right. Yeah, David, I think the first letter should have been E. David. Okay, but we got it. Nice. Okay, brilliant. Okay, let's try another one now then. So that's with a shift of 3. So let's look. What if we did a shift of 17? Now, as you can see here, the A with a shift of 17 becomes an R. So, can you encrypt your hobby using a shift of 17, please? That's okay, David. Don't worry. Just having a go, anyway. Can you please encrypt your hobby? And I see if I can figure out your hobby using a shift of 17. Okay, so remember, you're looking at the outside letter because we're starting off in plain text, and then you're finding the corresponding ciphertext inside. So while you're doing it, I'm going to put my hobby and see if you can figure it out as well. Okay, there's my attempted writing on the screen at the top if you want to try. Right, Daisy, what's your hobby? T. So that's a C. I. R. So CR and then an R. A. C-A-R. C-R-A. W. F. K. T. Craft. Daisy, is your hobby crafts? So doing crafts. Right, Daisy, see if you can figure out what my hobby is. I put it at the top. And hopefully I've encrypted it correctly. Nice, well done, Daisy. So as you can see here, imagine, in the Roman times when they were sending messages like this, and we can still use it today. It's not just restricted to then. But imagine intercepting a message that looks like that on the top left of the screen. That would be very confusing, wouldn't it? And to even start to figure that out would be difficult. So again, that goes back to using the language patterns to try and spot patterns that we can use to figure out the clues and decrypt. Nice, Daisy, you got it. Basketball is my hobby. Well done. Okay, so Daisy, you would have been taking the ciphertext they gave you, finding those letters on the inside wheel, and then moving outwards, weren't you? Okay, so you would have found the S is a B, the R is an A, the J, find it on the inside, becomes an S, the B becomes a K, and so on. And then you might have spotted the S and the R here are the same as the first two letters. So there's a pattern. So that's a BA. And then we've got a double C. And now if you think about hobbies, and we've got a BA and then a double letter, pretty much that word is probably going to say ball, isn't it? BA double L. Okay, just because that's a common pattern in our English language. Okay, so that actually is bringing us to the end of the session. Okay, so thank you all for taking part. We've gone through looking at ciphers and codes to learn a bit about cryptography. And we've looked at a couple of different ciphers, such as substitution ciphers, where we substituted letters for numbers and letters for symbols. Then we had the Pigpen cipher, which substituted letters for made-up symbols. And then we looked at the Caesar cipher, which is a shift cipher, and it shifts the letters along the alphabet. Okay, so thank you very much for taking part, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Diolch. Thank you, Daisy.